Khan. Now, if we go into resources as well, like for example, Montesinos.
So who's Montesinos? Go ahead, let them know who Montesinos is.
Well, Menashe ben Israel was, I'll go ahead and just read it off because it kind of explains it. Menashe ben Israel was one of the most famous Sephardic rabbis from Amsterdam, Holland. He was convinced that the restoration of Israel could not take place until the Jews had spread throughout the world. In September 1644, Antonio de Montesinos, a Spaniard returning to Europe after having made his fortune in Latin America for almost 10 years, arrived in Amsterdam. Antonio rushed to see Rabbi Menashe as well as the other Jewish leaders to tell them his incredible story. 2 years earlier, while exploring the equatorial region with a group of explorers, he had taken a trip by donkey to a remote province in Peru, along with several natives who accompanied him. As a group traveled through the mountains, an unexpected wind forced them to stop and seek shelter in a cave. There, the natives began to murmur amongst themselves that the storm was a punishment from God uh, for the way the Spaniards treated the sacred people. Finally, the wind stopped and the travelers resumed their journey. Several weeks later, after his return to Ecuador, the Inquisition arrested him on suspicion of being a Judaizer. While in prison, he began to reflect on the comment he had heard from the natives and promised that if he were to be released, he would go in search of this sacred people. Fortunately, he did not have to wait too long because he was released due to a lack of evidence.
And Salakia, if I may,
Sure.
right? All of the evidence that I have seen and acquired about Antonio de Montesinos would indicate, right? It said that he was a Sephardic Jew or a Spanish Jew, right? He's clearly depicted as an Edomite, right? As a so-called Western European Caucasian, right? And
Con.
this is in the 16th century, right? That he lived, the 1500s, right?
Yeah. Con. Yeah. 1611, I think.
Okay, 1611, so the 17th century that he lived. So by this time, the identity of the Jews had already been stolen, and you had these Western European Caucasians calling themselves Jews.
Con. Yep.
Let's make that clear, as opposed to the actual descendants of the 10 tribes, which are the sacred people or these indigenous Indians, as we're going to find out, right? Go ahead.
Con. And it shows that because as we speak, you're going to see that these people were looking at him crazy just by his aspect, by the way he looked. Since he was like really, really white, they were already looking at him like the enemy. And I'll go ahead and keep reading. Finally, upon researching a small clearing at the edge of the forest, Salakia, the guide stopped and emitted a series of whistles. A few minutes later, four natives appeared, angry at the European presence. They held a conversation with the guides in their native language. Upon learning Montesinos' identity, they hugged him and recited the Shema Israel in his honor as a welcome. Then the group headed towards a nearby village. See, they were already looking at him kind of funny. But what he told the guides is that he was a Jewish and he believed in their God. So they were thinking in their minds that their brother had came from the native land. So they accepted him with open arms. And you see that everywhere. They did the same thing in North America with the Indians. So they always came, like something we didn't cover with Arcereth was his interpreter. Columbus's interpreter, Luis de Toros, was actually a Hebrew interpreter. And we see that here. Let me go ahead and interpret this real quick because I pulled it up in Spanish. Give me a second, Salakia. All right.